There are 5 questions you should never answer, and the people who ask them are not to be trusted. These are not complex questions. They are not interrogations. They are not obvious traps with flashing warning signs. They are the opposite. They feel soft. They feel warm. They sound like someone who cares about you, someone who respects you, someone who just wants a conversation. And that is exactly what makes them dangerous, because the most harmful questions in the world don't sound threatening. They sound like friendship. They sound like honesty. They sound like trust. And by the time you recognize what they truly were, you have already given away something you cannot take back. Machiavelli spent his life observing how people destroy themselves, not in battles, but in conversations. A single wrong answer at the wrong moment could cost someone their alliances, their reputation, or their power. And he noticed something that most people still haven't understood centuries later. The people who fall are not the ones who get attacked directly. They are the ones who get asked the right question at the perfect moment by the right person, and they answer fully and honestly because it felt safe. I am going to walk you through all 5 questions, and the 5th one is the foundation, the one that makes the other 4 possible. If you learn to never answer that one question, the other 4 lose most of their power over you. But you need to understand the first 4 to see why the 5th one matters the most. Before we go into these 5 questions, understand something clearly. This is not about becoming paranoid. This is not about assuming everyone around you is a threat. This is about protection. It is about recognizing which questions are safe to answer and which ones are designed to take something from you that you never intended to give. That is not distrust. That is awareness. Here is what most people fail to realize. You were trained from childhood to answer every question that comes your way. A teacher asks, you respond. A parent asks, you respond. An authority figure asks, you comply. That training made you obedient, not powerful. Power begins the moment you understand that not every question deserves your truth, that the space between someone asking and you answering is the most critical moment in any conversation. In that space, you either keep your power or give it away. Right now, that space barely exists for you. By the end of this, it will, and it will never disappear again. The first question you must never answer is something you have heard countless times. It shows up at work, at home, with friends, with family. You will recognize it instantly. Someone does something that directly affects you. They make a decision without consulting you. They cross a boundary. They commit you to something. They change plans. They give away your time. And after everything is already done, after the action has already been taken, they look at you and say, you don't mind, right? Or, that's okay with you, isn't it? Or, you're fine with that, right? Pause and really see what just happened. They are not asking for your permission. The action is already completed. The decision has already been made. That question is not a real question. It is a statement disguised as one, and the way it is framed traps you into agreeing because the expected answer is no. I don't mind. Anything else makes you seem difficult, unreasonable, or overly sensitive. The question is structured so that disagreement comes with a social cost, and most people would rather absorb the violation than pay that cost. The person asking knows this. That is why they act first and ask later. Think about how many times this has happened in your life. Someone gave away your time and then said, you don't mind helping, right? Is this deal? Someone shared something private about you and then asked if you were okay with it. Someone took credit for your work and then said it doesn't matter because you are a team. Someone volunteered your effort, your energy, your resources, and then followed it with a question that made saying no feel like starting a conflict. When you respond with it's fine, you believe you are being easygoing. You think you are maintaining peace, but the person asking just learned something about you. They learn that they can act first and secure your approval afterward, and they will repeat it. The next time the violation will be slightly bigger, slightly more intrusive, slightly more costly, because every time you agree to something you did not choose, you raise the limit of what they think they can take without asking. Machiavelli understood that people judge more by appearances than reality. The phrase you don't mind creates the illusion of consent. It makes it look like you agreed. It makes it seem like you were part of the decision. And if clears throat, you ever challenge it later, they will remind you that you said it was fine. That question did not just gain your compliance. It secured your signature on something you never agreed to in the first place. So when someone says, you don't mind, right? You do not nod automatically. You do not say it is fine. You say, I would have preferred if you had asked me first, or I would have handled that differently. You do not need to be aggressive. You do not need to create tension. You simply refuse to agree when everything is pushing you to say yes. The moment you stop approving things you never chose, everything shifts. People stop informing you and start consulting you. That shift changes your entire position in every relationship, and it begins with refusing to answer one simple question. The second question is more subtle and harder to detect because it does not come after a violation. It comes before one. It arrives disguised as something positive, something a good friend might say, something that sounds like respect. And because of that disguise, you allow it every time. Someone looks at you and says, "Can I be honest with you?" And almost automatically you respond, "Of course." Every time, because what kind of person refuses honesty? What kind of person rejects truth? So you say yes. And in that moment, you have given someone permission to say whatever they want while presenting it as something valuable they are offering you. Think about the last time someone said that to you. What followed? Was it something that strengthened you? Something that gave you clarity? Or was it something that planted doubt? Something that made you question yourself? Statements like, "I don't think this will work," or "I'm not sure you're ready," or "I think you're making a mistake." Because they asked permission first, because they labeled it as honesty, you feel like you are not allowed to react negatively. They were just being honest. They were just trying to help. But what they offered was not truth. It was their perspective wrapped in a word that makes it difficult to challenge. If you observe carefully, the person who asks, "Can I be honest with you?" Iprasan Andi rarely follows it with something that builds you. It is usually criticism, doubt, or something that slows your momentum. And they deliver it under the protection of the word honest. You cannot argue with honesty without appearing defensive. Now think about the people who genuinely care about you. When they have something difficult to say, do they ask permission first? No, they simply say it. Real honesty does not need preparation. It does not need you to lower your guard before it arrives. The people who ask that question are asking because they know what they are about to say will not feel supportive. They need your agreement before delivering it, because without that agreement, you might recognize it for what it is immediately. The introduction is the disguise. Remove it, and the statement underneath loses its power. Machiavelli understood that the strongest manipulations are disguised as virtues. When someone wraps their words in the language of honesty, care, or courage, it becomes difficult to challenge them without looking like the problem. You become the one who cannot handle truth while they appear brave for speaking it. The frame is set before the conversation even begins. Now, notice what happens when you stop accepting that setup. When someone asks, "Can I be honest with you?" Instead of agreeing immediately, you respond with, "Depends on what it is." Or you can say what you want, "I will decide what I take from it." Suddenly, there is hesitation. They pause. They adjust because the entire strategy depended on your automatic agreement. When you do not give it, the protection disappears. They have to say what they intended without the shield. And without that shield, it no longer sounds like truth. It sounds like what it always was, an opinion they wanted to deliver without resistance. That is the second question. And once you start recognizing it, conversations begin to look very different. Most people go through life absorbing these questions without ever seeing the mechanism behind them. But once you see it, you cannot unsee it. You can see it now, and that changes how people engage with you from this moment onward. But the third question operates in an entirely different space. The first two took something from you in the moment. The third one makes you carry something that isn't yours, something heavy, and that weight follows you for months, sometimes even years, without you realizing you chose to pick it up. What is it? The third question you must never answer, and this one is the most flattering trap out of all five, because it makes you feel valued right before it makes you responsible. Someone asks you, "What would you do if you were me?" It could be a friend, a coworker, a family member. They explain their situation, a problem, a crossroads, a decision they are struggling to make, and then they look at you with that expression that says, "I trust your judgment more than my own." What would you do? And you answer, of course, you answer because it feels good to be the person someone turns to. It feels like respect. So you think it through carefully. You consider the options, weigh the outcomes, and you give them your honest advice. But here's what actually happened. That person had a decision to make, a decision with real consequences. And instead of carrying the full weight of that decision on their own shoulders, they shifted part of it onto yours. Because now, if they follow your advice and it works, who gets the credit? They do. They made the right decision. Your involvement fades away. But if they follow your advice and it fails, who gets the blame? You do. You told them to do it. They remember your exact words. They replay the conversation and hold you accountable for a decision that was never yours to make. Think about a time you gave someone advice and it didn't go the way you expected. Did they fully own their choice, or did they come back with, "You told me to do this. You said this was the right move." Even if they never said it directly, you felt it. The weight of a decision that wasn't yours still landed on you, because once you put your fingerprints on someone else's choice, those fingerprints become evidence. And sometimes the person asking isn't confused at all. They have already decided, they already know what they want to do, but they want someone else's name attached to it in case it falls apart. A backup plan, a scapegoat. And by answering, "What would you do if you were me?" You volunteer for that role without realizing you stepped into it. Machiavelli wrote that a ruler should always seek counsel, but only when he chooses, not when others impose it. What he understood is that giving guidance under someone else's terms puts you in a vulnerable position. The moment you prescribe a path for another person's life, you inherit the consequences of that path without having any control over it. So when someone asks, "What would you do if you were me?" you don't give them a direct answer. You give them something better. You ask, "What are you leaning toward?" You say it sounds like you already know what you want. You place the decision back into their hands without taking ownership of it. You can listen, you can support, you can ask questions that help them think clearly, but you never attach your name to a decision that someone else has to live with. Let people carry their own choices. Your opinions about other people's lives are safest in the only place where they cannot be used against you, inside your own mind. That is the third question. The transfer of responsibility. Three questions now recognized: compliance, honesty, decisions, all guarded. But the fourth question moves into darker territory. The first three were about what people take from you: your agreement, your guard, your name. The fourth one takes something from someone who isn't even present, and you become the weapon without realizing you were loaded. What is it? The fourth question you must never answer, and this one should make you uncomfortable when you realize how often it has been used on you. You confront someone, you bring up something you heard, something you saw, something you know. Maybe it is a lie they told. Maybe it is something they did behind your back. Maybe it is information that exposes them. Instead of addressing what you said, instead of dealing with the actual issue, they look at you and ask, "Who told you that?" Makyas, Inni, Kendin, Kendin, Burr. And instantly, the entire conversation shifts. You are no longer discussing what they did. You are now discussing how you found out. They have redirected the focus away from their actions and placed it onto your source. If you answer, if you give them a name, you have done two serious things at once. You have betrayed the person who trusted you with that information, and you have given the person you are confronting a target, someone they can silence, discredit, or remove so the truth stops reaching you. Think about every time someone deflected like this. Did the conversation ever return to the real issue? Almost never, because the shift worked. You got pulled into explaining yourself, defending how you knew, justifying your position. And all the while, the person responsible avoided accountability completely. They turned your confrontation into your problem with just a few words, and you helped them do it by answering. Now consider what happens after you reveal your source. The person you confronted now has a new goal, not to address what they did, but to eliminate the person who exposed it. They distance them. They discredit them. They ensure that no one brings you information again. And the next time something happens behind your back, you will not hear about it because the one person who would have told you was burned by your answer. Machiavelli understood that the first way to judge intelligence is by looking at the people someone surrounds themselves with. The people who bring you truth are rare. They are valuable. And the question, "Who told you that?" exists to identify and remove those people so that you are left in the dark again. Answering that question does not make you honest. It makes you unreliable to those who trusted you. So, when someone asks who told you that, you do not give them a name. You bring the focus back. You say, "It doesn't matter how I found out. What matters is whether it's true or that's not the point we're discussing." The source remains protected, and the person who tried to redirect has no choice but to return to the issue they were trying to escape. Let them face it. Let them deal with their own actions instead of chasing the person who revealed them. That is the fourth question, the hunt for the source. 4 questions now secured. Compliance, honesty, decisions, and sources all protected. Each one works differently. Each one uses a different method to take something you should not have given. But the fifth question is the root, the one that makes all the others possible. This question does not take your agreement or your guard or your name or your source. It does something deeper. It removes your defense completely. It destroys the pause between the question and your answer. The very space that protects you from every other trap, and you give it away instantly because refusing feels unacceptable. The fifth question you must never answer is the master question, the foundation behind all the others. Someone looks at you and says, "You trust me, right?" And everything inside you wants to say yes, because saying no feels like an accusation. Saying no feels like you are doubting them, like you are the problem, like you are damaging the relationship by not offering this one simple reassurance. So you say it, "Of course I trust you." And in that moment, every door opens. Because once you say those words, you lock yourself into a position where questioning anything they do afterward makes you seem inconsistent. You said you trusted them. So when they act without asking and follow it with, "You don't mind, right?" You hesitate to push back. You trusted them. When they say, "Can I be honest with you?" and deliver something that unsettles you, You feel obligated to accept it. You trusted them. When they ask what you would do and later shift blame onto you, you struggle to object. You trusted them. When they are confronted and ask who told you, you feel the pull to answer because trust implies openness. That one word becomes a blank check and they decide the amount every time. And the amount is always more than you intended to give. Think about someone in your life who asked you this question. Think about what followed after you said yes. Did their actions justify that trust? Or did they use your answer as protection? Every clear throat time their behavior fell short, they reminded you of your own words. I thought you trusted me. You said you trusted me. Why are you questioning me if you trust me? Your own statement becomes the chain that holds you back. Every time something feels off, every time you want to question what is happening, you hesitate because you already committed to not questioning. And that is how the pause disappears. The moment that should protect you gets erased, and every other trap becomes easier to walk into with a single word. Here is what most people are never told. The people who have truly earned your trust never need to ask for it. They do not require a verbal confirmation. Their behavior has already established it. Real trust does not rely on declarations. It is built quietly through consistent actions over time, not through a single moment where someone pressures you to say it out loud. The question, "You trust me, right?" is usually asked by those who need the words because their actions have not been enough. They need to hear it because they have not shown it. And the moment you say it, you hand them something powerful. You give them a kind of immunity, a shield they can raise every time their behavior falls short of what they implied. This is why it is the master question. Think back. Why did you accept a violation instead of pushing back? Because you trusted them. Why did you lower your guard when they asked to be honest? Because you trusted them. Why did you take on the burden of their decision? Because you trusted them. Why did you reveal the name of someone who told you the truth? Because you trusted them. Every trap described here works because of this one foundation. The first four are just extensions. This one is the core. Remove the core and everything else weakens. Stop declaring trust on demand and the rest of these manipulations lose their strength almost immediately. Machiavelli wrote that those who deceive will always find people willing to be deceived. And this question is the mechanism that creates that willingness. It is the moment you lower every defense without proof. Not because the person earned it, but because the tone of tea,